The hollow thud of the manila envelope hitting the kitchen counter echoed through the deathly silence. My heart sank as I read the words emblazoned across it, divorce petition. "What is this, Mitchell?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. My husband of 7 years, the man I thought I knew inside and out, stared back at me with cold, empty eyes. "It's exactly what it looks like, Leona. I want out of this marriage." The words hit me like a truck, stealing my breath. We'd had our issues like any couple, but I never imagined he'd go this far. Before I could form a response, he continued, each sentence a fresh dagger to my heart. "I've met someone else, Kara. She's pregnant, with my child." Pregnant? We had been trying for years to have a baby, going through test after test, treatment after treatment, all for naught it seemed. Fury and anguish welled up inside me as I struggled to process this gut-wrenching revelation. "How could you do this to us? To Eli?" I choked out, tears streaming down my face. Mitchell's gaze flickered briefly before hardening once more. "Don't bring him into this. It's better this way, for all of us." My fists clenched at his callous disregard for the life we had built, for our 5-year-old son who adored him. 1,000 questions swirled in my mind, but one burned brighter than the rest. "How long has this been going on?" A heavy silence hung between us before he finally answered, each word dripping with disdain. "Almost a year. I didn't plan for it to happen, but things with Kara, they just clicked in a way you and I haven't for a long time." His confession was like a vice around my heart. A year? He had been lying, betraying me, our vows, our family, for a year while I remained blindingly oblivious. White-hot rage coursed through my veins as I struggled to maintain my composure. "Get out!" I hissed through gritted teeth. Mitchell opened his mouth, perhaps to offer an excuse or empty apology, but I cut him off with a look that could freeze hellfire. "Get out! I can't even look at you right now." For once, he had the sense to comply, retreating without another word. The deafening silence that followed was a small mercy as I crumpled to the floor, waves of anguish crashing over me. How could the man I loved, the father of my child, do this to us? The life I thought I knew lay in ruins around me, and I couldn't even find it in myself to cry. My heart had gone numb. As the shock slowly gave way to fury, one thought crystallized in my mind. Mitchell would pay for this. By ruining our family, he had awoken a forces he couldn't possibly comprehend. I would make sure of it. The apartment was barely bigger than a shoebox, but it was all I could afford on my architect's salary as a single mother. Moving out of the house I once called home was a logistical nightmare, made worse by Mitchell's icy indifference. "This is what you wanted, Leona," he sneered as I boxed up my meager belongings. "Don't act so wounded." I bit back the urge to hurl the nearest object at his smug face. Eli would be home from school soon. I couldn't let him see me lose control, not when his world had already been shattered. As if on cue, the front door opened and my sweet boy came bounding in, his innocent smile slowly fading as he sensed the tension. "Hey, kiddo," Mitchell said with forced cheeriness. "I was just leaving." Eli's brow furrowed in confusion as he looked between us. "Where are you going, Daddy?" The words stuck in Mitchell's throat as his gaze met mine, a fleeting crack in his steely demeanor. This was my chance. "Daddy isn't going to live with us anymore," I said carefully, crouching down to Eli's level. "He's moving out." Eli's brown eyes widened in horror as the weight of my words hit him. "No, I don't want Daddy to leave." His anguished cries pierced my heart, but I stood firm, steadying myself against the tidal wave of guilt crashing over me. "I know this is hard, baby," I said softly, shooting a pointed look at Mitchell, "but sometimes grown-ups make bad choices that hurt the people they love most." Mitchell's jaw clenched, but he remained silent, unable or unwilling to defend himself to his own son. With a final, withering glare in my direction, he turned and walked out the door, already halfway to his new life with Kara. In the weeks that followed, I immersed myself in the routines of single parenthood, working long hours at the firm, scrambling to make dinner, helping Eli with homework, reading his favorite stories at bedtime. Anything to fill the gaping void Mitchell's absence had opened in our lives. My friends and family rallied around me, offering shoulders to cry on and ears to vent my anger and pain, but their hollow reassurances did little to appease the simmering fury I felt toward my ex-husband. It all came to a head one evening as I scrolled through social media, a picture of Mitchell and his pregnant mistress shoved unceremoniously in my face. Her teasing caption made my blood boil. "Baby daddy looks good in this one, doesn't he, ladies?" The audacity of her flaunting their sordid affair was too much. Before I could stop myself, I typed out a scathing response calling her out as a cheap homewrecker, threatening legal action if she didn't remove the photo immediately. Her response was like an icy plunge into darkness. "You're one to talk about breaking the law. Your dear Mitchell has been funding my business with embezzled money for months now. One word from me and he's ruined for good. Maybe check your facts before you come for me, sweetheart." My hands shook with a potent mixture of rage, betrayal, and cold calculation. So, that's how he had been supporting his pregnant mistress' lavish lifestyle, with ill-gotten gains from illegal activities. As the gravity of Mitchell's actions settled in, one certainty crystallized. He would face the consequences of his reprehensible choices, no matter what it took. Kara had unwittingly handed me the key to dismantling their charmed little world. If she thought she could threaten me, she had no idea what was coming. By exposing Mitchell's illegal dealings, I would burn their twisted fairy tale romance to the ground. This was just the beginning of his downfall and my retribution. "You've got to be kidding me," Jenna said flatly as I rehashed the latest drama over coffee. "Mitchell is involved in something illegal?" I shook my head warily. That's what Kara's message implied. I don't have proof, but it would explain how he's bankrolling her cushy lifestyle and startup. Jenna's eyes narrowed. "You know you can't just confront him without evidence, right? He'll deny everything and make you out to be the crazy ex-wife." My hands tightened around the ceramic mug. She was right. As much as I hated to admit it, I needed ammunition if I wanted to take Mitchell down effectively. But where could I possibly get that? "I might know someone who can help," Jenna said slowly. "An acquaintance who dabbles in private investigation work." I cocked an eyebrow. "You're going to have to do better than that if you expect me to hire some shady PI. Jenna's responding grin was tinged with mischief. "Oh, Sam is very good at his job. Extremely discreet, too. He'll get you the dirt you need on Mitchell and Kara without batting an eye." Despite my reservations, her confidence was infectious. Having concrete proof of Mitchell's misdeeds would be invaluable, both legally and to finally unveil his true nature. Fine. I relented. Set up a meeting with this Sam guy, but if he turns out to be a charlatan, you owe me. 2 days later, I found myself sitting across from a ruggedly handsome man in a downtown cafe. Sam had an easygoing charisma about him that immediately put me at ease. "So, Leona," he began, taking a sip of his coffee. "Jenna filled me in on the broad strokes, but I'll need more details if I'm going to get this investigation rolling." I spent the next hour meticulously recounting every suspicious behavior, every seed of doubt that Mitchell had planted over the past year of his infidelity. Sam listened intently, scribbling notes without interrupting. "Based on what you've told me, it definitely sounds like this Kara woman has some shady business dealings happening," he said once I'd finished. "Your husband is likely financing her illegally. Whether he's knowingly complicit or just being played remains to be seen." My cheeks flushed at his matter-of-fact acknowledgement of Mitchell's stupidity. Sam gave me a conspiratorial wink, sensing my embarrassment. "Don't worry, we're going to get to the bottom of this and make sure the truth comes to light. Mitchell won't be able to hide from his actions any longer." An excited glimmer entered Sam's eyes, one I immediately recognized, the thrill of the hunt. He launched into the specifics of his investigation strategy, assuring me he had reliable contacts and methods that would yield results quickly. "I'll need total transparency from you," he said firmly. "Any text messages, emails, phone records, everything you have that could be relevant evidence. We can't afford any blind spots." I nodded solemnly. "Of course, I'll give you whatever you need." A slight smirk played across Sam's lips. "Excellent. Then let's make your lying, cheating ex-husband regret the day he ever crossed you, Leona." Those words ignited a simmering flame within me. This wasn't just about getting payback on Mitchell. It was about unraveling the web of deceit he was entangled in, exposing him for the man he truly was. As Sam outlined the initial steps of his plan, I felt the first stirrings of anticipation. There would be no more sitting idly by while Mitchell soaked in the fruits of his betrayal uncontested. His downfall was inevitable now, and I couldn't wait to watch it unfold. The thick manila envelope landed on the table with a dull thud, its innocuous appearance belying the bombshell it contained. Sam's face was unreadable as I reached for it with trembling hands. "You're going to want to brace yourself," he said gravely. "This isn't pretty." My heart pounded as I flipped open the file, greeted by a meticulously compiled dossier detailing every illicit activity Kara had been involved in. Financial records, email exchanges, phone transcripts, all of it implicating her as the mastermind behind a major embezzlement and fraud scheme. "Oh my God," I muttered, feeling lightheaded as the sheer scope of her crimes came into focus. This wasn't just some small-time grift. Kara had been systematically siphoning millions from investors and partners for years to fund her startup company. More damning still were the records showing large sums being funneled directly to Mitchell's personal accounts over the past 12 months. He may have been oblivious to the source initially, but these transactions made it clear he was complicit, whether willfully or through sheer arrogant ignorance. How? I looked up at Sam, utterly stunned. "How were you able to uncover all of this?" He shrugged nonchalantly. "I have my methods. Let's just say some people in Kara's circle owed me a favor or two. Part of me didn't want to know the details. The proof was sitting right in front of me, damning my ex-husband as deeply embroiled in unscrupulous, potentially illegal activities. A kernel of naive hope that Mitchell was just a misguided fool evaporated in that moment. "I can't believe he got himself mixed up in something like this," I whispered, more to myself than Sam. "He never showed any signs." "Con artists are masters at deception, Leona," Sam interjected, his voice softer now. "This Kara clearly had your husband wrapped around her finger. He was an easy mark, blinded by ego and infatuation." I squeezed my eyes shut, nausea roiling in the pit of my stomach. No matter how deep Mitchell's betrayal cut, it was almost too much to process him enabling such brazen criminality. All for what? Money? Status? The depraved thrill of being a willing cuckold to a remorseless psychopath? "We have to turn all this over to the authorities," I said through gritted teeth. As much as I longed to confront Mitchell and Kara directly, to make them own up to their duplicity, the crimes were too grievous to handle alone. To my surprise, Sam looked hesitant. "Are you sure that's what you want? Because once this information gets into the legal system, it'll be out of your hands. The DA could go easy on Mitchell, make him a deal to testify against Kara in exchange for leniency." I opened my mouth to protest, but he barreled on. "Just think about it. He'd get to play the victim, lie his way into looking innocent, while you take the fall as the bitter ex-wife trying to take him down. After everything he's put you through, is that the outcome you want?" Visions of Mitchell weaseling his way out of accountability, leaving me once again holding the bag of his misdeeds, made my blood boil. Sam was right. I had the power here, not the justice system. To truly make Mitchell face the consequences, it had to be on my terms. "You're right," I said, steadying my voice with grim resolve. "This needs to be handled differently. He doesn't get to escape this unscathed. Not after destroying our family." Sam gave a somber nod of understanding. "Then we'll do this your way. No more lies, no more running from the truth. Kara and Mitchell's charade ends now." The fire of determination burned bright within me. No more hiding, no more avoiding the ugly realities he created. Mitchell was finally going to reap what he'd sown, and there would be no escaping the damage this time. He made his bed with Kara. Now they could lie in it together. The weight of Sam's revelations hung over me like a oppressive cloud in the days that followed. I found myself replaying every interaction, every seemingly innocent moment with Mitchell, searching for clues I'd missed about the depths of his depravity. How could I have been so blind, so painfully naive? The evidence was incontrovertible. My husband was bankrolling his mistress's illegal schemes with embezzled funds. And yet, some traitorous part of my heart still clung to the man I thought I knew, the loving father and partner he once was. As I grappled with that sickening cognitive dissonance, an even more difficult question loomed. What did I do with this information? Sam's words echoed in my mind about taking matters into my own hands, not giving Mitchell a chance to play the victim. But could I really destroy him so utterly? Yes, he betrayed our family, our vows, in the cruelest possible way. But did that give me the right to obliterate any chance he had at a relationship with Eli? My son's crestfallen face as Mitchell walked out our door flashed before me. As much as I loathed admitting it, Mitchell was still Eli's father. If I went scorched earth and turned over the evidence to the authorities, any hopes of co-parenting would be shattered. Mitchell could lose everything, his career, his reputation, possibly even his freedom, depending on how deep this rabbit hole went. And Eli would be caught in the crossfire, forced to grapple with his dad's unforgivable choices at an age when no child should have to carry that burden. The cruelest part was how easy the alternative seemed in that moment. Take the high road. Confront Mitchell directly, force his hand to come clean, and walk away from Kara's schemes before it was too late. Preserve whatever tattered shreds of his character remained, for Eli's sake, if nothing else. I could already envision the hollow regret in his eyes, the feeble apologies and promises to change. A chance to extract some small moral victory, to paint myself as the long-suffering wife who did the right thing. The notion made me feel dirty in a way I couldn't fully articulate. Did I really want to let him off that easily after everything? To potentially allow him to slink back into semi-respectability while his transgressions faded into rumor? No. I deserved better than that. Eli deserved a father whose commitment went beyond empty platitudes when the consequences came calling. Maybe this was Mitchell's chance to finally be that man I tried to rationalize, but in my heart, I knew the truth. He had made his choices, over and over, putting his own selfish wants ahead of his family at every turn. Worse, he had gleefully partnered with a remorseless criminal to do it, heedless of any moral boundaries. As the hours and days bled together, I found myself no closer to any answers, careening between white-hot fury and soul-weary resignation. The proof of Mitchell's undoing was clutched in my hands. But did I have the strength to be the one to unravel it? The door flew open with a bang, Mitchell storming into the apartment with wild eyes. For a fleeting second, I felt a pang of the old fear. What fresh hell was this? But I didn't flinch as he opened his mouth, a stream of spittle-laced vitriol spewing forth. You just couldn't leave well enough alone, could you, Leona? You had to stick your nose where it didn't belong. Despite his bravado, there was a thin veneer of desperation behind Mitchell's anger. He knew somehow that the gig was up. Is this about Kara? I asked evenly, holding his malicious glare without flinching. Because if it is, I have to say, your taste in partners leaves something to be desired. His nostrils flared, and for an instant I thought he might strike me. But the fight went out of him as quickly as it came, shoulders sagging in wary resignation. You know, then, about her. Businesses. I know you've been funding them illegally. Yes. I fixed him with a pointed stare. Did you really think you could get away with it forever, that there wouldn't be consequences when the truth came out? Some of the old Mitchell flickered in his eyes then, the shadow of a man I once knew. I never wanted any of this, Lee. It just snowballed, you know? One mistake compounded into another until I was in so deep. Don't. I held up a hand, equal parts disgusted and unsurprised by his attempt to play the victim. Don't insult me by pretending this was all some hapless accident. You made your choices, fully aware of what you were doing. His jaw clenched, but he remained silent. Good, at least he hadn't completely abandoned shame. Kara's been leading you on for her own gain this whole time, I pressed on, unable to resist the opportunity to twist the knife. She played you like a fiddle, convincing you to fund her criminal enterprises like some love-struck teenager. That's not how it was. Mitchell's words were laced with desperation. I knew things weren't right with her business from the start, but I loved her, damn it. I sacrificed everything for her. I laughed, a hollow bark that stopped him in his tracks. And that's supposed to excuse what, exactly? Being a willing accessory to corporate fraud and embezzlement in the name of love? The air quotes dripped with disdain. Mitchell flinched as if I'd struck him, the reality of his sordid predicament finally sinking in. Does she even really love you, Mitchell? I asked, somehow gentler now. Despite everything, some small flicker of pity for his gullibility remained. Or did she simply use you as a means to an end, draining you of cash and credibility until there was nothing left to give. He opened his mouth, a retort on his lips, but whatever he saw in my gaze gave him pause. His shoulders slumped, the last vestiges of ego deflating like a popped balloon. "What do you want from me, Leona?" The words were little more than a cracked whisper. "What is it going to take for you to let this go?" I regarded him steadily, the ultimatum already formed in my mind. "It's simple. Leave Kara, cut off all contact once and for all. Turn yourself in and fully cooperate with the authorities about her illegal dealings. Give a full confession about your role, too." A muscle twitched in Mitchell's cheek. "And if I refuse?" "Then the evidence goes to the DA. Every bank statement, every damning email, all of it." I let the weight of my threat sink in. "They'll have more than enough to pursue charges against both of you for fraud, embezzlement, you name it, and custody." My voice caught at the thought of my innocent son being collateral damage. Well, let's just say a convicted felon doesn't stand much chance in family court. Mitchell's face drained of color as the severity of his situation dawned. In that moment, I almost felt a flicker of sympathy. He was utterly broken, the deluded fairy tale he bought into with Kara shattering around him in spectacular fashion. "You do that?" His voice was barely above a rasp, disbelief and hurt mingling in equal measure. "Take my son away from me completely over this?" Fire blazed in my eyes, banishing any lingering pity. "You did that yourself the day you walked out on us for that criminal shrew, Mitchell. This is just the consequences coming home to roost." We held each other's gaze for several beats, two combatants squaring off one final time. "So?" I pressed, folding my arms across my chest. "What's it gonna be? Kara and a prison sentence? Or a chance to do the right thing for once and salvage what's left of your relationship with your son?" Mitchell's eyes slid shut, his face contorting through a gamut of emotions: shame, anger, resignation. When he finally looked at me again, it was with a soul-weary exhaustion I'd never seen before. "I'll do it," he murmured, the words tasting like ashes. "I'll cut ties with Kara and turn myself in, cooperate fully. Just, please, don't take Eli away from me entirely. He's all I have left." The rawness of his plea caught me off guard. Scanning his features, I searched for any hint of deception, any ploy or angle he might be working. But his eyes were painfully sincere, holding the broken gaze of a man who had nothing left to lose. "Okay," I said at last with a slow nod. "Okay, Mitchell, I'll hold you to your word on this." It wasn't absolution, not even close, but at least he was finally taking responsibility. After all, he made his bed with Kara. Now, he'd have to lie in it alone. Despite Mitchell's assurances that he would cut ties with Kara and come clean, part of me remained skeptical, right up until the moment he showed up on her doorstep. Sam had insisted on being present, giving me a discreet nod as I watched the scene unfold from my car across the street. Even from a distance, the fury was palpable on Kara's face as Mitchell laid everything bare: her illegal dealings, his own culpability, his decision to go to the authorities. Her rantings and denials quickly dissolved into shrieked profanities as the reality sank in. To her credit, she didn't go down without a fight. A tussle erupted, Mitchell physically restraining her as Sam hurried over to assist. By the time the police arrived, Kara was in handcuffs, spitting venom at every person in sight. "This is on you, Leona," she screeched, struggling against her restraints. "You did this. You're going to pay for ruining everything." I watched impassively as the officers wrestled her into the back of the squad car. What did I care for her idle threats? She was the architect of her own unraveling, simple as that. With her off the streets and the evidence securely in the DA's hands, all that remained was for Mitchell to turn himself in. He did so without fanfare a week later, released on bail pending his formal arraignment. His legal jeopardy paled in comparison to the court of public opinion, however. It didn't take long for the sordid details to leak, a charlatan's word-of-mouth hailstorm of rumors that left his reputation in tatters. Former friends and business associates scrambled to distance themselves from the mess, terrified of being dragged down by the association. As Mitchell's shame unfolded in the full glare of the spotlight, I retreated into the shadows with Eli, surrounding him with as much normalcy and routine as possible. The vultures from the media camped outside our home relentlessly in the early days, desperate for any scrap of salacious detail. To his credit, Mitchell did his part to shield Eli from the worst of it. Whatever lies and betrayals had wrought through our marriage, he was still a devoted father, in his own way. We both knew sheltering our son was the priority. Everything else could be sorted later. Those later details eventually took shape as a plea agreement offered by the district attorney. In exchange for Mitchell's full cooperation in building their case against Kara's network of co-conspirators, they would show leniency on potential jail time. It was the lifeline he had resigned himself to seizing, a slap on the wrist compared to the potential prison sentence he faced. The disgraced golden boy trading what was left of his pride to avoid harder consequences. Surprisingly, it was Eli who put up the biggest protest when I floated the notion of Mitchell taking the deal. "No, Mom," he cried, anguish written across his young features. "You can't let Daddy go to jail. He made a mistake, but he's not a bad person." Seeing the torment in my son's eyes made my heart clench painfully. Despite everything, Mitchell had been a doting father up until his self-inflicted undoing. Did Eli really deserve to have that ripped away forever? The decision weighed heavily on me, far more than the legal victory or any sense of retribution. I had set out to make Mitchell answer for his sins, not martyr our son in the process. In the end, I agreed to support the plea deal, if only to preserve that small lifeline for Eli. Mitchell avoided jail time but received a criminal contempt charge, 2 years of probation, and tens of thousands in fines and restitution. It was a slap on the wrist compared to Kara, who refused to cop a plea and earned herself a multi-year sentence after her conviction. The self-proclaimed brilliant entrepreneur exposed as nothing more than a grifter and con artist. As she was led away in handcuffs, Kara threw one last venomous look in my direction, her eyes burning with hatred. "This isn't over, Leona. Not by a long shot." Her threats fell on deaf ears. I was too busy savoring the purging feeling of having persevered, of clawing my way back from the depths Mitchell had abandoned me in. He was the one who had been broken, left to wallow in the ashes of his own lies and failures. In the months that followed, life gradually returned to a new normal. Mitchell moved into a shabby one-bedroom, his finances and career in tatters thanks to the legal restitution. We existed in our separate spheres, the only intersection being the occasional transfer of Eli between homes. My son quickly noticed and commented on the stark differences in our living situations, the inevitable questions arising that I did my best to answer with honesty and sensitivity. While anger still kindled deep within me over Mitchell's choices, I had no desire to turn Eli against his father. No, Mitchell was doing a capable job of torching those bridges himself. I watched with a strange detachment as he frittered away the last remnants of respect from former friends and colleagues who still deigned to be seen with him in public. The rumors, innuendo, and bald truth of his involvement with Kara's schemes persisted like a dark cloud no matter where he went. In stark contrast, my career began to flourish in the aftermath. The high-profile nature of my divorce proceedings begat a strange air of reverence from clients, who saw me as a paragon of overcoming adversity with grace. Ironic that the same scandal that destroyed Mitchell afforded me such redemption. I threw myself into work with a renewed vigor, quickly rising through the ranks to become a lead architect on several major projects. The money and accolades were a bonus, but it was the sense of purpose and intensity that truly rejuvenated me. Away from the office, Eli and I grew inseparable, rebuilding our family of 2 into an unbreakable unit. He was my heart, my shining light in the dark days when the weight of Mitchell's betrayal threatened to consume me. I would never take for granted the sacred bond we shared. So when Mitchell inevitably called requesting to renegotiate the custody agreement, citing his renewed stability as justification, my answer was unequivocal. "You forfeited any say in Eli's life the day you threw it all away, Mitchell," I said in measured tones. "You made your choices knowing full well the consequences. Don't insult me by playing the victim now." "Leona, please." His pleas took on a desperate edge. "You have to let me be a part of his childhood. He's all I have left." "No, he's not. There's nothing stopping you from rebuilding your life, earning back some dignity and self-respect other than your own stubbornness." I paused, fixing him with a look that brooked no argument. You don't get to cry about your son being taken from you when you were the one who abandoned him first. End of discussion. Hanging up the phone, I felt a strange sense of finality wash over me. The anger was gone, bled dry after months of perseverance and hard-won successes. What remained was peace, acceptance of the truth that this was my life now, my path forward. I was finally free of Mitchell's toxicity and the pain of his betrayal, free to focus solely on providing the loving, stable home that Eli deserved, and in doing so crafting a new identity, a new self, from the ashes of my former life. Striding into the living room, I scooped up Eli in a fierce hug, planting a kiss on his cheek as he squirmed with laughter. "Mom, what's got into you?" I only hugged him tighter, warmth blooming in my chest. "Nothing, baby. I'm just really glad to be here with you. That's all." After the storm, there was finally calm, and as I held my son close, I knew this was everything I ever wanted or needed.